Hi, my name is Jessica, and I have a story to share. A story that might shock some of you, and perhaps even make others question my decisions. But this is my truth, one I've kept hidden for far too long, and I've finally decided it's time to come clean. I need to start by saying that, no, this isn't some wild tale of outrageous behavior or explicit scandal. It's about love, loneliness, and how a simple connection went terribly wrong. Let me take you back to the beginning. My husband, Richard, and I have been married for almost a decade. We met right after college. He was ambitious, charming, and the kind of man who could walk into any room and have everyone's attention in an instant. I fell hard for him, and the early days of our relationship were like something out of a romantic movie. It was perfect. Fast forward a few years, and life wasn't so picture-perfect anymore. Richard's work took him away from home more often than not. His job was demanding, and he was constantly traveling for business meetings, conferences, and networking events. While I understood that his work was important, his absence took a toll on our marriage. We grew distant, barely talking for days at a time. When we did talk, it was mostly surface-level conversations. How was your day? And what's for dinner? But underneath it all, I was lonely. I was craving attention, companionship, and someone to fill the void Richard had unknowingly left in my life. That's when things started to change. We lived on a quiet, peaceful farm outside the city. One of the things that had drawn us to this place was the space and the opportunity to keep animals. We had a few chickens, a couple of goats, and, of course, our horse, Midnight. Midnight was a beautiful, strong black stallion with a temperament so gentle that it felt like he understood emotions better than most people. I had always loved horses, and Midnight was special. He had been a gift from Richard for our 5th wedding anniversary, a gesture to show how much he cared. Even though he couldn't always be there during the long, lonely days when Richard was away, Midnight became my source of comfort. I would spend hours in the stable with him, talking to him and just being in his presence. It sounds strange, I know, but animals have a way of sensing when you're hurting. Midnight always seemed to know when I was sad or frustrated, nudging me gently with his nose as if to say, "I'm here. You're not alone." Over time, those moments with Midnight became the highlight of my days. I found myself pouring my heart out to him, telling him things I couldn't even tell my husband. Midnight was patient, never judgmental, and always there. It was as if he had become the emotional support I had been missing. I know what you're thinking. How could I compare a horse to my husband? But you have to understand, Richard was absent, and Midnight was all I had. The turning point came one summer evening. John came home unexpectedly from one of his trips. I didn't hear him pull into the driveway, and I was in the stable as usual with Midnight. I didn't realize how much time I had spent there, how absorbed I had become in this strange emotional attachment, until Richard walked into the stable. I didn't notice him until it was too late. "What are you doing?" Richard's voice was sharp, filled with confusion and suspicion. His eyes darted between me and Midnight, as if trying to piece together the scene in front of him. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't know what to say. How could I explain this without sounding insane? Richard stood there, staring at me, waiting for an explanation that I wasn't sure how to give. How could I even begin to explain the emotional whirlwind I had been caught in? "I didn't mean for it to happen," I said quietly, tears welling up in my eyes. I was just so lonely. "Richard, I needed someone to talk to, and Midnight was there." He shook his head, clearly struggling to process everything. "Why didn't you talk to me? Why didn't you tell me you were feeling this way?" I tried, my voice trembling. "I did, but every time I brought it up, you were too busy or too tired or just distracted. I eventually gave up. I thought maybe this was just how things were going to be, so I found comfort in Midnight." He sighed heavily, running a hand through his hair. "I didn't know you felt this way. I thought we were fine." I replied softly, "We weren't." I didn't want to burden him with it. "You were always so busy with work, and I didn't want to seem needy, but the truth is, I needed you, Richard. I needed my husband, and when you weren't there, I turned to Midnight." There was a long silence between us as we both stood there, the weight of the situation sinking in. Finally, Richard spoke again, his voice much softer this time. "This is insane, Jessica. I don't know how to move forward from here. I took a deep breath, feeling the tears spill over onto my cheeks. I know, I admitted, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make things right. He looked at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of pain and uncertainty. I love you too, Jessica, but this is going to take time. I nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. I know, and I'm ready to talk about everything. Not just Midnight, but us. Where we went wrong and how we can fix it. That was the first step in rebuilding what had been broken. It wasn't going to be easy, and it wasn't going to happen overnight, but for the first time in a long time, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back to each other. Over the next few weeks, Richard and I began attending couples therapy. It was challenging to open up about my emotional attachment to Midnight and how his absence had affected me so deeply. Richard was patient, listening to my feelings and frustrations. We started to communicate more openly, addressing the issues that had driven us apart. It was a slow process, but the therapy sessions gave us tools to reconnect and understand each other's needs better. Despite our efforts, there were still moments of tension. Richard struggled with feelings of betrayal, while I battled my own insecurities and loneliness. It was a delicate balance, trying to heal the emotional wounds that had festered over the years. But gradually, we began to rebuild our relationship, finding new ways to support and appreciate each other. One evening, after a particularly difficult day, Richard and I decided to take a walk around the farm. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over everything. We talked about our dreams, our fears, and how much we wanted to make our marriage work. It felt like a fresh start, a chance to rediscover the love that had brought us together in the first place. As we walked, we passed by Midnight's stable. I watched him graze peacefully, a reminder of how much he had meant to me during our darkest times. Richard noticed me looking and placed a hand on my shoulder. "He's a good horse," he said softly, "but he's not the only one here for you." I smiled, feeling a sense of relief wash over me. "You're right," I replied. "I don't need to rely on him for my happiness. I have you." The months that followed were filled with small victories and gradual improvements. We started spending more quality time together, engaging in activities we both enjoyed. Richard made a conscious effort to be more present, setting aside time each week for just the two of us. We also established better communication habits, ensuring that we addressed issues as they arose, rather than letting them build up. Midnight remained a beloved part of our lives, but his role shifted. He was no longer a substitute for human connection, but a cherished companion who brought joy and peace to our home. We found a healthy balance, appreciating the presence of both our husband and our horse. However, the journey wasn't without its setbacks. There were nights when old habits crept back in, moments of doubt, and times when the stress of life seemed overwhelming. But through it all, Richard and I leaned on each other, committed to rebuilding our marriage and supporting one another through the challenges. One day, we decided to adopt a second horse, hoping it would bring even more life and energy to our farm. Naming him Thunder, we welcomed him into our family with open hearts. Thunder's playful nature and boundless energy brought laughter back into our lives, reminding us of the joy and love that had initially drawn us together. As time went on, the bond between Richard and me grew stronger. We learned to appreciate each other's strengths and support each other's weaknesses. Therapy continued to play a crucial role in our healing process, providing a safe space to navigate the complexities of our emotions and experiences. Looking back, I realize how much I took Richard for granted during those lonely times. His unwavering support and love were the foundation of our relationship, and I was foolish to seek solace elsewhere. But through this painful experience, we discovered a deeper understanding of each other and the resilience of our love. Now, almost a year later, our marriage is stronger than ever. We've learned to communicate effectively, prioritize each other's needs, and nurture the love that once seemed lost. Midnight and Thunder are thriving, bringing joy and companionship to our home. I no longer feel lonely or unvalued. Instead, I feel grateful for the love and support that Richard continues to offer me every day. Thank you all for watching and listening to my story. If you found it relatable or helpful, please give it a thumbs up and share it with others who might benefit from hearing about my experience. Remember, setting boundaries and prioritizing your well-being is crucial in overcoming personal challenges. Stay strong, and I'll see you in the next video.